A misty dawn blanketed the rural fields of California where dew clung to the grass like forgotten promises, and the dirt roads gleamed slick from the night's chill. An old pickup truck rattled along the uneven path, its bed loaded with metal milk cans that clanked with every bump. Manuel Reed gripped the steering wheel with calloused hands, his worn jacket frayed at the cuffs, dark circles etched under his eyes from nights spent worrying over bills and the weight of single parenthood. At 35, life had boiled down to this routine: deliver fresh milk before the sun fully rose, scrape together enough to feed his son, and hope tomorrow wouldn't break him further. He glanced at the dashboard clock, then back at the cans. Each one a fragile piece of his livelihood. Beside him in the passenger seat, 7-year-old Mateo clutched a small plastic crate filled with a few labeled bottles, his expression as serious as any adult's. The boy had his father's dark hair and earnest eyes, but a curiosity that lit up his face like the first rays of morning. The truck pulled up to a modest corner store, its faded sign creaking in the breeze. Manuel hopped out, heaving a can onto his shoulder with practiced care, as if spilling even a drop would cost him more than he could afford. That's when Mateo tugged at his father's sleeve, his voice a whisper laced with intrigue. "Dad, do you think we'll see the lady today?" Manuel paused, setting the can down with a thud. "What lady?" Mateo tilted his head up, eyes wide and innocent. "The one who always stands in the big house on the hill. She watches us every time. Yesterday I saw her behind the window, not smiling, not saying anything, just looking." Manuel froze, his gaze drifting involuntarily to the distant hill, where a grand estate loomed, partially hidden by a canopy of oaks and a pristine white fence. He'd always dismissed it as just another symbol of the wealth that divided their small town, the kind of place where people like him didn't belong. But Mateo's words sent a shiver down his spine. "You sure about that, son?" Mateo nodded vigorously. "I'm sure. And she had her phone out like she was recording us." Manuel swallowed hard, his throat dry. What could a stranger in a mansion possibly want with a poor milkman and his boy? He scanned the hill again, half expecting to see nothing, but there she was, a silhouette in the second-floor window, a young woman with golden hair framed by elegant curtains. She stood motionless, her gaze fixed downward straight at them. It wasn't a look of disdain. It was something deeper, almost searching, as if she'd been waiting for this exact moment. Manuel took a half-step back, instinctively pulling Mateo closer. "From now on, you don't wander off alone. You hear me?" But Mateo, undeterred, gripped his father's hand and whispered, "Dad, she doesn't look mean. It feels like she's waiting for us!" Manuel's heart pounded. He stared up at the figure in the window, her presence now impossible to ignore. Why would a wealthy woman spy on a struggling father and his child day after day? What secret could tie her secluded world to their simple one? The question hung in the air like the morning fog refusing to lift. After that day, Manuel tried to push the encounter from his mind. He told himself that the rich had their own lives, distant and untouchable, while he was just a milkman scraping by. But the woman's gaze from the hill lingered like a shadow he couldn't shake, prickling at the back of his neck during his daily rounds. Every morning, he rose at 4:30, the chill of the pre-dawn air seeping through the thin walls of their modest home. He milked the cows in the dim barn light, washed the cans until they gleamed, and secured them to the truck bed with frayed ropes. His fingers cracked, and raw from the cold, moved with mechanical precision. He couldn't afford to be careless. Mateo, always eager to help, would climb into the passenger seat clutching his little notebook where he scribbled deliveries. Corner store 6 bottles. Mrs. Rose's 3 bottles. The boy treated it like a game, but Manuel knew it was preparation for a world that demanded too much too soon. One crisp morning, as they unpacked at a stop, Mateo eyed the lunchbox with its sparse contents, a couple of dry sandwiches. He hesitated, then asked softly, "Dad, can we get yogurt today?" Manuel forced a smile, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. "End of the week, buddy." Mateo nodded, looking away. "I don't need it. I was just asking for fun." The words hung heavy, a child's attempt to ease his father's burden, and Manuel felt a familiar twist in his gut. He glanced up at the hill, and there she was again, a faint figure in the window, watching silently. The first day after the initial sighting, Mateo pointed excitedly. "There! She's looking again!" Manuel grunted, focusing on the road. The second day he veered onto a side path to avoid the hill altogether, but Mateo tugged his sleeve. "Dad, she's at the side door now." Manuel's grip tightened on the wheel. On the third day, a light drizzle fell, turning the dirt to mud. He assumed the rain would keep her inside, but through the haze a blurred shape appeared behind the glass. Mateo whispered, "She doesn't mind the rain. It's like she's afraid of missing us." Manuel snapped, "What are you talking about, son?" The boy shrugged, but the words unsettled him. Manuel's suspicions grew. One dawn, as they loaded up, he spotted a sleek car parked at a distance, its engine idling. No one emerged, but he felt eyes on them. The vehicle trailed subtly before vanishing, as if ensuring their safety. That evening, he held Mateo's hand tighter than usual. "No more running ahead, okay?" Mateo tilted his head. "Are you scared of her, Dad?" Manuel paused. "I'm scared something might happen to you." That afternoon at the corner store, the owner haggled ruthlessly. "Milk's everywhere these days. Take this price or find another buyer." Manuel clenched his jaw and agreed, his shoulders slumping as he stepped outside, the weight of defeat pressing down. Mateo watched him, eyes welling up. "Dad, is it my fault? Do I drink too much milk?" Manuel knelt, pulling the boy into a fierce hug. "Never. You can have all the milk in the world. I just need you to grow strong." In that vulnerable moment, soft footsteps approached from behind. Manuel turned, and there she stood, the woman from the hill. Up close, her beauty was striking, but exhaustion lined her eyes and her hands trembled slightly. She wore a simple coat, yet it screamed elegance. Her gaze fell first on Mateo, softening before meeting Manuel's. "I'm sorry. I've been watching you both for days." Manuel instinctively drew Mateo closer, his voice edged with caution. "What do you want?" She swallowed, her composure cracking. "I just wanted to make sure the boy was safe. Every time I see him, it feels like I'm glimpsing a piece of my life that's gone." Manuel stared, caught off guard. Mateo peeked out. "Are you the lady from the hill?" She managed a tearful smile. "Yes, I'm Lucia." The boy tilted his head. "Why do you watch us all the time?" Lucia's eyes shifted to Manuel, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I've been building up the courage to come down here and say something, and today I couldn't hold back anymore." Manuel's grip tightened. "Say what?" She took a deep breath as if crossing an invisible line. I want to buy your milk. But not just for the milk. I want to meet you, not because you're a milkman. I want to understand how a man like you with so little can still raise a child with such clean hands. Manuel remained wary. Who are you, really? Lucia glanced back at the hill, then at them, her voice soft with confession. I'm the daughter of the ranch owner up there. Manuel and Mateo stood frozen, the revelation hanging between them like an unspoken storm. Lucia stood there, her posture a mix of determination and nervousness, as if fearing rejection. Tomorrow, could you come to the house? My father wants to meet the new milk supplier, and I'd like to talk more openly. Manuel's guard went up immediately. I'm not used to stepping into rich folks' homes. Lucia nodded, her tone earnest. I understand, but I'm not inviting you for charity. I'm inviting because I need you. And I want you to see that I'm not just someone hiding behind windows. Mateo tugged at his father's hand. Dad, I want to see if they have horses. Manuel looked down at his son's eager face, thin from sparse meals, but bright with curiosity. He sighed, relenting for the boy's sake. All right, but we meet and leave. Lucia's smile broke through genuine and relieved. The next morning, Manuel scrubbed himself clean and donned his only intact shirt, its collar slightly frayed. Mateo wore his patched shoes, excitement bubbling despite the climb up the winding hill road. As they ascended the surroundings, transformed fences grew ornate lawns, manicured pathways paved with smooth stone. Mateo whispered in awe, Dad, this place is like in the movies. Manuel squeezed his son's hand, saying nothing. A butler greeted them at the iron gates, leading them through a courtyard with a bubbling fountain down hallways, lined with oil paintings into a grand sitting room where polished wood gleamed under chandelier light. Manuel hovered at the threshold, feeling out of place, afraid his boots might scuff the floor. Lucia appeared in a simpler dress than before, but still radiating poise, her eyes lit up at Mateo. Hello, Mateo. We have ponies in the stables. I'll show you later if that's okay. The boy's face beamed. Really? Manuel murmured. Thank you. A deep voice echoed from the staircase. Is that the milkman? Don Francisco descended, an older man with sharp features and a cane that tapped authoritatively. His gaze swept over Manuel, appraising the rough hands and modest clothes. Your milk is good, but here we need more than quality. We need reliability. Manuel met his eyes steadily. I don't talk fancy. I work. If you want reliable, look at how I raise my son. Don Francisco turned to Mateo, who stood straight. Hello, sir. The old man nodded faintly, a grudging respect. But then a man in overseer's attire entered Victor with a smug curl to his lip. Sir, we have dozens of suppliers. Why entertain a poor father dragging his kid along? Lucia frowned. Victor, hold your tongue. Victor feigned politeness, but his words dripped venom. I'm just concerned. Some might exploit the young Miss's kindness. Manuel's fists clenched. Victor leaned toward Mateo, his voice sickly sweet. Like the big house kid, lots here, but not for everyone. Lucia stepped forward. Don't speak to the boy like that. Don Francisco's voice cut through. Enough! Victor retreated, but not before shooting Manuel a glare that promised trouble. That afternoon, Manuel and Mateo departed. Lucia walked them to the gate. Come back tomorrow for deliveries. We can talk more. Manuel nodded curtly. On the descent, clouds gathered darkly, wind shifting ominously. Birds flew low. "Storm's coming," Manuel muttered. Mateo glanced up worriedly. "Will we make it home?" "Dad," Manuel urged the truck faster, but midway down the slick dirt road, the tires spun into mud, bogging them down. Gusts howled, rain lashed like needles. Manuel leaped out, shoving the truck, but the wheels sank deeper. Mateo shivered inside, tears streaming. "Dad did!" Manuel yanked open the door, hugging him. "Don't be scared. I'm here." They were stranded, the storm intensifying, branches whipping wildly. Then headlights pierced the downpour. An SUV screeched to a halt. The door flew open and Lucia dashed out, hair-plastered, coat flapping. "Manuel, Mateo," Manuel blinked in shock. "What are you doing here?" She scooped Mateo into her arms first, the boy trembling like a soaked bird. "I saw the storm building. I knew your truck was old. I couldn't leave you out here," Manuel protested. "The milk can be remade," Lucia shouted over the gale tears mixing with rain. "Lives can't!" Manuel relented, hoisting Mateo into the SUV. Together, they salvaged a few essential cans before piling in and speeding away. In the vehicle, Mateo clung to Lucia's hand. You really came to save us." She nodded, voice soft. "Yes, because I don't want you to be afraid like that anymore." Manuel caught her slip the word "you," encompassing them both, and his heart tightened. As they reached the hill's base, Lucia's phone buzzed. A message from Victor with a blurry photo snapped through the rain, her embracing Mateo Manuel nearby. The text, "Miss, the whole town will see you rescuing the milkman. Your father won't approve, and I have ways to handle this." Lucia paled. Manuel glimpsed at pride flaring. "I told you. I don't want my son dragged into the mud," Mateo whimpered. "Dad, did we do something wrong?" Manuel soothed him. "No, but some people twist right into wrong." Lucia met his eyes. "I won't let them." The storm had barely passed when the poison began to spread. By the next morning, the entire valley was buzzing, not about the fallen trees or flooded fields, but about the photograph. Victor had made sure of that. The blurry image taken through sheets of rain showed Lucia Pierce clutching a small boy to her chest, while Manuel stood beside the stuck truck, his arms around them both. The caption that circulated through group chats and whispered conversations was simple and deadly. The rancher's daughter, risking everything for the milkman and his bastard child. Manuel first heard it at the corner store when Mrs. Delgado pulled him aside, her voice low and urgent. "Manuel, people are saying Mateo isn't really your son. They're saying Carmela got pregnant by someone else before she ran off. Victor is telling everyone the boy might even be Don Francisco's." Manuel felt the ground tilt beneath his feet. He drove home in silence, heart hammering so hard he could hear it in his ears. When he stepped through the door, Mateo was sitting on the porch, steps, knees drawn to his chest, eyes red and swollen. "Dad," the boy's voice cracked. "They're saying I'm not your real son, that you're not my real dad." Manuel dropped to his knees right there on the wooden steps and pulled his son into his arms so tightly that both of them trembled. "Listen to me, Mateo. Listen with your whole heart." His voice was hoarse, raw. "Blood can tell you what color your eyes are. Blood can tell you how tall you might grow. But blood does not decide who your father is. I am your father because I stayed. Because I held you when you had nightmares. Because I worked until my hands bled so you could have milk in your glass every single morning. That is what makes me your dad." Mateo buried his face in Manuel's neck, sobbing. "Promise you won't give me back, even if I'm not yours. Manuel's tears fell into the boy's hair. "I could never give you back. You were never mine to give. You are mine because I chose you. And I will choose you every single day for the rest of my life." That night the house was quiet except for the sound of Mateo's occasional hiccuping sobs in his sleep. Manuel sat on the edge of the bed, one hand resting on his son's small back, the other clenched into a fist so tight his knuckles turned white. The next morning they drove to the clinic in town. Don Francisco was already there, standing stiffly beside Lucia. Carmela arrived 10 minutes later, dressed too nicely for the occasion, her eyes darting nervously. Victor lingered outside the door like a vulture. The nurse drew blood from all of them in heavy silence. Mateo sat on Manuel's lap the entire time, face pressed into his father's chest, refusing to look at anyone else. 2 hours later, the doctor returned with the sealed envelope. He cleared his throat. "The results show Mateo is not the biological son of Manuel Reed." The room went deathly still. Carmela exhaled in visible relief. Victor, watching through the glass door, allowed himself a small triumphant smirk. But the doctor wasn't finished. "However, when we ran the secondary markers against Mr. Francisco Pierce, the probability that he is the biological grandfather is extremely high, 98.7%. Lucia's hand flew to her mouth. Don Francisco staggered back one step, gripping his cane so hard the wood creaked. Mateo looked up at Manuel, confusion and terror swirling in his young eyes. "Dad, does that mean I have to leave you?" Manuel stood slowly, lifting his son into his arms, even though the boy was getting too big to carry. He turned to face every person in that room, Don Francisco, Lucia, Carmela, and the ghost of Victor outside. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of mountains. "No, it does not mean he has to leave me. Blood gave him life, but I gave him a father. I changed his diapers at 3 a.m. when he had fevers. I taught him how to tie his shoes. I worked until my back broke so he would never go to bed hungry. Blood does not get to take him away from the only father he has ever known." He looked straight at Don Francisco, eyes burning. "You can have your DNA. You can have your money. You can have your ranch. But you will not have my son." Tears streamed openly down Lucia's face. Don Francisco stared at Manuel for a long, unbroken moment, the powerful rancher who had built an empire suddenly looking very small. Then the old man did something no one in the room expected. He bowed his head, and whispered voice breaking, "You are right, Manuel. Some things blood cannot buy." Outside the door, Victor's smirk had completely vanished. The news of the DNA results spread through the valley like wildfire after a drought, twisting facts into gossip that burned everyone it touched. Manuel didn't care about the whispers at the market or the sidelong glances from neighbors. What haunted him was the shadow in Mateo's eyes, the way the boy clung to him now, as if every hug might be their last. That night in their small home with its creaking floors and patched roof, Manuel sat vigil by his son's bed. Mateo tossed fitfully, his small hand gripping Manuel's shirt even in sleep. "Dad," the boy murmured once half awake, "don't let them take me." Manuel's voice was a whisper steady as stone. "No one is taking you. You're home." The next morning, as the sun crested the hills, a sleek car pulled up to their modest gate, dust swirling in its wake. Mateo peeked through the window and froze, ducking behind his father. Manuel stepped onto the porch, his jaw set, ready to fight with everything he had. The door opened, and Don Francisco emerged leaning on his cane more heavily than before. Lucia followed, her face pale but resolute. No victor in sight, no lawyers, no enforcers. Manuel blocked the path. "If you've come to take my son, you'll have to kill me first." Don Francisco raised a hand, his voice measured. "I'm not here to take. I'm here to see." He glanced at the house, the cracked walls, the leaning fence, the child's shoes by the door. Then his eyes settled on Mateo, who peered out warily. The old man lowered himself to one knee, ignoring the protest of his joints. "What's your name, boy?" Mateo swallowed, stepping forward slightly but staying close to Manuel. "Mateo!" Don Francisco nodded, his eyes misting despite his efforts. "Mateo, do you know who your father is?" The boy didn't hesitate. He turned to Manuel. "My dad is the one who makes milk for me, who holds me when I'm sick, who never leaves me." Manuel looked away, blinking hard against the sting in his eyes. Lucia wiped her cheek silently. Don Francisco exhaled slowly, rising with effort. "The boy is right. Blood might give me the right to call him grandson. But only your love gives you the right to call him son." Manuel stared, the words sinking in like rain on parched earth. The old man reached into his coat and pulled out a sheaf of papers. Manuel tensed. "I'm not signing anything." "These aren't to take him," Don Francisco said. "They're to protect him." He explained calmly, if the DNA confirmed Mateo as a Pierce, opportunists might try to claim custody for leverage twisting Carmela's greed, or using the boy as a pawn in estate games. The documents formalized Manuel as legal guardian unbreakable by blood claims or court challenges. Lucia stepped forward, her voice soft. "Please, don't let him become a bargaining chip for adults. He deserves better." Manuel took the papers, his hands steady. "I've never seen him as anything but my son." Don Francisco met his gaze. "I know. That's why I'm here." Lucia added quietly, "Victor's gone, fired this morning. Father won't let him near the ranch again." Relief washed over Manuel, though he didn't show it. As for Carmela, she'd been summoned earlier, her face ashen when confronted. Don Francisco had been blunt. "If you want to be a mother, earn it with truth and time, not demands." She'd left without argument, the weight of her choices finally catching up. Before turning to leave, Don Francisco addressed Mateo again. "Would you like to visit the ranch sometime? We have ponies, dogs, wide fields to run in." Mateo glanced at Manuel, who nodded gently. "If you want." The boy approached cautiously, reaching out to grasp one of the old man's fingers, a tiny gesture that spoke volumes. "Mister, can you promise not to take me from my dad?" Don Francisco closed his eyes briefly, his voice thick. "I promise. I won't take you from the man who loves you." Mateo nodded, tears spilling, then in a whisper, "Then, can I call you Grandpa?" Lucia sobbed openly. Don Francisco's shoulders shook as he nodded vigorously, turning away to compose himself, the proud rancher undone by a child's grace. A week later, Manuel delivered milk to the ranch as usual, but this time there was no awkwardness, no divide. Don Francisco met him at the gate, shaking his hand firmly. "Keep selling your milk, but from now on, your family." Lucia handed Mateo a small cowboy hat, smiling through fresh tears. "Mateo, let's go see the ponies." The boy whooped and ran ahead across the green fields. That evening, back in their little home, Manuel read a letter slipped into his pocket by Don Francisco. "Manuel, I've been rich my whole life, but never knew what it meant to be a father. You with nothing taught me. Don't let anyone say you're unworthy. You've done the hardest thing, you've stayed. Manuel's eyes blurred. Mateo snuggled close. Dad, do I have two homes now? Manuel smiled, kissing his forehead. You have two homes, but only one dad. And he's right here. Blood might bring people together, but only love makes them stay.